Welcome back to the Naughty Dog Reviews. So here we are, finally ready to talk about the Uncharted games. At this point we're a little over halfway through the Naughty Dog review series, and this is the point where the company took the most dramatic change in direction, going from making games that were platformers at their core, to making interactive movies that put far more focus into being cinematic. That's probably what most of you know them for nowadays, considering it's been that way for over a decade. While I'm personally more of a fan of the types of games they made before, I also love me some Uncharted. Join me today as I cover the first of Nathan Drake's adventures in this review of Uncharted: Drake's Fortune. One thing I've noticed about Naughty Dog while going through all of these games is the fact that they were always moving with the times. As soon as there was a trend, they hopped on it. Crash Bandicoot was their response to Super Mario 64, Jak 2 was their response to GTA, and Uncharted was their response to the growing popularity of shooters such as Call of Duty and Mass Effect. When they did this, however, their games never felt like they ripped off those others, but instead had their own unique identity. Uncharted is the gaming equivalent to the Indiana Jones movies, presenting a treasure-hunting adventure led by a smartass but likable protagonist. We had seen games with a similar premise in the past, but never before were they this cinematic. This game is all about making it feel like you're playing an interactive action movie, and I'd say it does a pretty good job at it. There are some really awesome moments that you would think would just end up being shown through a cutscene, but no, you actually get to play through them. Now Uncharted is a pretty simple story. Nathan Drake, who is supposedly a descendant of Sir Francis Drake, uncovers the coffin of his ancestor and discovers that it's actually empty. Well, aside from a full journal that he left behind leading to El Dorado, the city of gold. So Nathan decides to follow the clues left in the notebook in an attempt to find this lost city. While simple in premise, this story is actually really fun to watch unfold. The main cast of characters are extremely likable, with Nathan Drake being the aforementioned smart-ass protagonist, Sully being his mentor and partner in crime, and Elena being Nate's love interest as well as every guy's dream girl. They aren't the most complex characters in the world and don't really change much throughout the story. Still, it's always a joy to see them interact with one another, especially with context from the later games. Uncharted is also very simple when it comes to its mechanics. There really isn't much to figure out besides moving around, jumping, and shooting. I don't think that's much of a problem though, as this game really isn't meant to feel like a traditional video game with character upgrades or complex movesets. It's meant to put you in the shoes of a treasure hunter, and again, it does a pretty great job at it. My biggest problem with this game, however, is that it can get really repetitive. 90% of the gameplay in Uncharted 1 consists of climbing and shooting. The climbing is fun a lot of the time, but can start to wear thin later in the game when you've done it so many times. The shooting is a little dated by modern games, but it was good for the time and still holds up pretty well. You can only hold one small weapon and one bigger one, rather than having any sort of inventory. This makes encounters more exciting because you have to make quick decisions on which guns are the best for every situation. These enemies take way too many bullets though. You'll really want to go for headshots because they'll kill in one shot, but anything else will take 3 or 4. You really won't realize how many gunfights are in this game until you play on the hardest difficulty. This is one of the worst experiences I've had playing a game on its hardest setting. You'll die in only 1 or 2 shots, and the AI on these enemies is actually pretty smart considering they won't be afraid to flank you when you're hidden behind cover. That alone is actually pretty cool. It's just that sometimes you never get a break from scenarios like this. I swear it's like you're constantly going from one gunfight to the next with some climbing and puzzles in between. Another slight negative I could point out is that the game can be a little buggy at times. These bugs don't really get in the way of the game much though, and the ones I've seen are actually more funny than annoying, so they don't really bother me. One day while my friend was playing this game, he randomly encountered a moan sound effect, and to this day we have no idea why it's even in the game. Someone please explain to us what that was. He also tried opening a gate one time, and it resulted in Nate being locked in an almost T-pose animation. We've gotten so many laughs from these clips that it's hard for me to look at them as a negative. The only other negative I can really think of is that the environments can get a little stale at times. Don't get me wrong, they look great, especially for the time, it's just that they aren't as diverse as in later games in the series. The level themes are pretty much always jungles or ruins. Again, they're beautiful, it just gets a little old at times. Now honestly, most of the rest of the game is pretty positive for me, besides a few exceptions that we'll talk about later. Like I said before, the environments look fantastic, even though there isn't really much to explore. You really just go from point A to point B, but that isn't a bad thing. It keeps the game flowing, which is really important in a game that's trying to tell a concise story, and doesn't really need a bunch of side stuff to get in the way. There is actually a bunch of treasure that you can find throughout each area. You use these treasures to unlock extras, but they aren't too important unless you're interested in things like concept art or trophies. For me, personally, trophies are a good enough reason to grab all of these, but I know that isn't the case for everyone. Now, beating this game on harder difficulties is pretty cool because it gives you skins to wear in future playthroughs. As you can see in a lot of my footage, I've been using Donut Drake, because, well, I suffered through the hardest difficulty to get it. And you know what? I don't have to explain myself to you. I earned this. You understand me? I earned this. Something that really helps this game stand out among others of its kind is just how great the dialogue and voice acting is. Listening to these three main characters talk to each other almost seems like you're listening to real people, which is something Naughty Dog only got better at over the years. Part of this is also thanks to the brilliant voice actors that were casted for these characters, most notably Nolan North as Nathan Drake. Nolan is an incredibly talented voice actor, and chances are, if you've played a video game, you've heard his voice before. Richtofen from Call of Duty Zombies, David from The Last of Us, Desmond Miles from Assassin's Creed, Modi from God of War, the man's in everything. The villain characters have great voices as well, although the characters themselves are extremely forgettable. I'm pretty sure almost nobody remembers the name of the actual villain, and I don't blame you, because I don't either. I mean, this guy's name could be something shrimpy like Preston for all I know. Before I start to wrap this up, I'm going to go over some things that happen towards the end of the game, and even though this game is 13 years old, I know some people still don't want it spoiled. So if that's you, skip to this point in the video. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Going into this game, I didn't realize that it had any supernatural elements to it. Because of that, I was really surprised by the whole zombie thing that was brought in close to the end. I actually thought it was a pretty cool twist on the story, showing us that El Dorado isn't actually a city of gold, but a gold sarcophagus containing an ancient evil. I've heard some people complain about this part because they don't like that it makes the game less grounded in reality, but I personally feel like it fits this game really well. The Indiana Jones movies have similar supernatural elements, and I never really hear anyone complain about it there because it makes a story like this more interesting. The first area you play in with the zombies is also a really nice change of scenery from the rest of the game. It almost feels like I'm playing a level from The Last of Us with its zombie-infested dark corridors. And after all of that, you face off with... Hold on a sec. Attack Navarro in a pretty annoying boss fight. You basically have to hide behind cover and take out every standard enemy in the area before you can move on to the next. If you try and go straight for Navarro, he'll immediately kill you, so don't try and cut corners. After going through a few of these sections, you'll have finally cornered him, but you still can't run up on him. You have to go from one cover to the next, wait for him to shoot, next cover, wait, and then finally reach him, only to do an epic QuickTime event fight. It's just a really annoying way to end an otherwise pretty solid game overall. Uncharted 1 was a pretty solid start to this franchise. It's clearly the most flawed when you compare it to its sequels, but that's really a good thing. A franchise should improve with each entry, as they can take what didn't work in the last game and fix or improve upon it. This game certainly has its flaws, but it set the stage for some fantastic sequels. I give Uncharted Drake's Fortune a 7 out of 10. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I hope to see you next week when I review Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. Until then, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.